Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and it is finally here. It is the Monday of training camp week. Teams, players, coaches, everybody will be reporting. Real NFL news will start again, and it already has started, which we will start talking about in this episode today. But lots of good stuff coming your way. All sorts of information flowing, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see the guys on the field, see where the coaches have players, see what the depth chart looks like, see the players in pads. I cannot wait to see real-ish football once pads come on and start to see how this Seahawks team takes shape. It is going to be a bunch of fun. I got a bunch of great stuff coming your way this week. So obviously we will be, I'll be at every practice as usual. I'll be doing player interviews. We'll be doing practice reports, the whole spiel. Plus we'll have Real Hawk Talk this week. We haven't figured out exactly which day yet. It'll either be Wednesday or Thursday. But we'll get you plenty of time with my co-hosts. And then got something a little bit new for you. I want to announce something kind of a big deal. I've been working on a new show with some new folks, and really excited to share with you that every Tuesday this season, you will be able to listen to a new Seahawks podcast called the Seahawks Collective. This is something I've been working on with another group and helped kind of bring together, I think, a really cool mix of voices and perspectives. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, Seahawks Collective will be live with myself, Rob Staten, who you all already know and have heard plenty on this show, Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic, and a new voice, Annabelle Hasselback. AB is somebody who I had a chance to get to know last year when she was interning with the Seahawks. She will be hosting this show every week. Now, this is going to start tomorrow night at 5 p.m. This will, unfortunately, for the first two episodes, we will not have Annabelle as part of the show as she has got plans that she is still winding down from the summer. But she will join us in by the third show, and she will host, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a really good, differing views from people, and we're gonna have a lot of cool voices. So looking forward to giving you even more Seahawks content than we already do. Make sure you check out the Seahawks Collective. You can find it at youtube.com/@Seahawks Collective, all one word. You'll also be able to find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those places. So keep an eye out for that. That will be coming up. And yes, for people wondering, is that Matt Hasselbeck's daughter? Yes, it is one of his daughters, and she is fantastic. He did a good job, and she's done him proud. Really, really cool person. You guys are going to love to get to know AB. She's fantastic. So that starts tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So that will be a Seahawks Training Camp Eve edition to kick off the Seahawks Collective pod. So make sure you check that out. Looking forward to sharing that all with you guys starting tomorrow. So kicking the show off with an announcement, cool stuff there. And what I want to talk about today, this happened during my live show yesterday. Actually, I gotta say, yesterday's show was not my favorite show that I've done. But when you're approaching 500 episodes, you're going to have a stinker every now and then, but whatever. As I was doing the show, the Noah Fant news broke, and I gave my initial reaction to it, but I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about that move, and I want to kind of share some thoughts about the move specifically, why it happened now, and what's going to happen next, as well as get into some of the implications for the roster and for some of the players on the roster. So that's what we're going to cover today. Looking forward to doing it. If you haven't already, give the show a like, click subscribe, click the little bell to get notified. You're going to want to do that because I can't tell you for sure when I'm going to be going live day in, day out for the rest until I get into a little bit of a rhythm with training camp. So make sure you do that. Make sure you go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up there, get access to ad-free audio of this show, as well as access to the Discord channel, and verified over at hbtix.com. There are dozens of seats available for the Seahawks game against the 49ers. There are full season tickets available there. Seahawks fans selling to Seahawks fans. Now, make sure you follow the recommendations I have there to make sure that these are legit and that you can trust them. There's mechanisms that I have recommended in the FAQ about how to go about transferring tickets, especially if you're going to buy full season tickets or do something that's a large financial transaction. There are escrow services. There's other ways to protect yourself from fraud or anything else. But in any event, head on over to HPTix. Let's get you in a seat for the season opener. My goodness, let's get as many Seahawks fans in the seat for that game as possible. All right, so let's talk about this Noah Fant move, and let's just go through the basics to start with. So if you do not know what has happened, why are we talking about Noah Fant? Well, Noah Fant was released by the Seahawks yesterday. This was a pretty big move and ends up saving the Seahawks about $9 million in cap space with him, off the books. He had non-guaranteed parts of his contract. That all, is stuff that Seahawks are not going to have to pay. That leaves the Seahawks right now with around $35 million in cap space, according to overthecap.com. And that's the place I recommend. They do a great job over there. And you might wonder, like, how common is this? How common is it for the Seahawks to, or honestly any team, but I didn't look through every team's transactions. How often do teams release a starting player without an injury issue, without an off-field issue, without a contract dispute? How often does that happen in July? Well, as far back as I could look, it has never happened. This has not happened before for the Seahawks. And it certainly has not happened in the John Schneider era. Now, have they cut starting players with large salaries during an offseason? All the time. It happened this year. It happened last year. That happens all the time. So cap casualty kind of things just are pretty normal. Cap casualties 2 days, 3 days before, 2 days before players report. By the way, tomorrow is when players report, even though Wednesday is when training camp practices officially begin. That doesn't happen. So why? Why did they make this move now? And I think the most likely explanation is they believed that Noah Fant had enough value that they could get something in return for him before they made this move. Now, I thought they would play poker a little bit longer. If you've been listening to this show, I have been predicting Noah Fant getting traded for months. Like, that was him being off the roster is not news to me. It's not a surprise to me at all. Him being cut was a little bit of a surprise, or released is the technical term in this case. And them doing it before camp started, that was a surprise. So why are those two things surprising? Well, it's really the second thing first. Why is it a surprise that they did it now? Well, because I thought they would be willing to showcase him in a preseason game, get him through camp, wait a little bit longer to see if a team had an injury, had a need, decided to bend and say, yeah, you know what? I don't like the guys we're seeing in our camp at that position. We'll give you a conditional 6th round pick or whatever. Like, that seemed to make sense to me that they would do something like that. Well, the reason that they likely did not, and we're going to go over a few, but I think the most likely reason about why not wait is because they didn't want Noah Fant taking starting snaps from players who are going to actually be the starters on this roster. And they might have somewhat of a competition to see who's going to be getting the bulk of those snaps. And they want to see those players in the positions they're going to be in. Who are those players? That is AJ Barner, who had the second most touchdowns as a rookie tight end in Seahawks franchise history. Yes, he had 4 touchdowns last year. That's the second most by a rookie tight end in Seahawks franchise history. They want to see more AJ Barner. It is Elijah Arroyo, their second-round pick, who just signed his deal. They want to see him. He is the most clear-cut overlap with Noah Fant's skill set. He's a guy that some people will look at and see an X receiver. He is not an X receiver. I don't think they're going to use him that way, but he will split out. He will run routes. He is not an advanced blocker, I would say, or a particularly physical blocker, but he's willing. But he has a lot of the same strengths, I would say, as Noah Fant. So it gets Elijah Arroyo more snaps. It also clears space for them to get more of an eye on Eric Saubert and Nick Callerup, who I'm the person that's probably going to be earliest on Nick Callerup, but that is the undrafted free agent out of Minnesota. He's about 265 pounds. I think he's gonna be a surprise player in camp, and I think that they want to see more of him, especially once pads come on. It also clears the path for them keeping both Robbie Oots and Brady Russell, should they want to do that. And I've predicted at the outset in my 53 that they're going to do that. They're going to keep both Robbie Oots and Brady Russell. And Brady Russell will be available both as a backup tight end and as a backup fullback and as a special teams player. He makes a lot more sense on this roster than Noah Fant probably does. So I think all of those things are the reasons that they wanted to do it before camp started. They want to make sure they're getting the snaps to the guys that they want to get it to. The other reason of why did they wait this long? Why didn't they do it earlier? It was because I think they believe they would be able to get something of value, of something of value. It doesn't mean it's a lot of value, but something in return for Noah Fant. Now, when the Dolphins made that trade of Jonnu Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that was the moment. And I think the Seahawks were like, all right, here we go. And then the Dolphins pulled a rabbit out of the hat. They got Darren Waller coming out of retirement. I'm not sure anybody saw that coming. And so that is, that was probably their best chance to get something in return for Noah Fant. Even if they had, it wasn't going to be much. I think the most optimistic would be to get like a conditional 5th round pick. Like that would be a surprise. I think more likely you're talking about a 6th or even a 7th for Noah Fant. So end of the day, not the biggest deal. But let's take a quick look back at Noah Fant's career and some of the players that are going to step in before I go to some of the other reasons about why now. Because there are other possibilities of why now. And they don't involve just wanting to get more snaps for those players that I mentioned. So I do see in chat there's some folks beefing about players. I will just say this. Everybody's welcome to have their opinion on a player. You can be negative on a player, positive on a player. My request there is once you said your piece, move on, especially if you're saying something negative. It's totally fine and you can explain yourself, but let's not belabor the point. It just gets people riled up, and I'd like to keep chat as football focused and friendly as possible and fun. Football friendly fun. Those are the 3 F's for the chat. So when you incessantly go negative on a player, which I get, I've done that before, it gets a little old after a while. So just make sure you've made your point and you move on. All right. So, okay. Let's get to a little bit about Noah Fant, what he's done, and what some of these other players have done that might be or likely are replacing him. Okay. So, Noah Fant, for his time in Seattle, he was a fine player. He had at least 400 yards receiving every year that he was here. He had 4 touchdowns in his first season, but only 1 over the last 2. He averaged like under 30 yards a game in most cases. And last year he averaged 35 yards a game. So that was his best with the Seahawks. He has been a relatively reliable target, catching over 75% of the passes thrown his way. He's been not a particularly big deep threat, which is for a guy with speed, you'd expect a little bit more. And in fact, I'm going to take a look at this. If you guys will give me the chance to do this, I want to look at for last year, how many plays over 15 yards. And I'm going to do this from 2022 to 2024. I'm going to do it just for the Seahawks. And we're going to look at how many catches over 15 yards. Let's do over 15 yards just to make it a little bit more of a round number. And make sure it's a pass. Okay. A reception. And we're going to see how many Noah Fant had over the last 3 years over 15 yards. All right. So DK Metcalf leads the Seahawks over that time with 75. Then Tyler Lockett had 56. By the way, neither on the team right now. Someone's going to have to replace those explosive plays. That's another show, by the way. Probably one of the biggest questions on this team. JSN is next with 45. Interestingly, Noah Fant is 4th with 32 catches over 15 yards or longer since 2022. After him, it goes all the way down to Colby Parkinson and Marquise Goodwin with 15. And then Will Dissly had 13. I find that interesting. If we look just at last year, Noah Fant had 11 such receptions, 11 catches of over a 15 yards or more. AJ Barner had 2. Now, there are some other differences here between Noah Fant and AJ Barner. A big one, whenever you're talking about a counting stat like number of receptions, you have to talk about opportunity, like what was the volume difference. And from a target perspective, Noah Fant had 43 targets last year. AJ Barner, that was 2023. Let me go ahead 1 year. Noah Fant last year had 64 targets. AJ Barner had 38. He had roughly half. Roughly. But still, the difference between 11 catches of 15 yards or more and 2 is significant. Now, the question becomes, do you think Noah Fant is going to be replaced by AJ Barner? I don't think so. Not 1 for 1. I think it's possible. I think they might believe that AJ Barner has more to offer than just being an inline blocking tight end. But I think that's most likely to be Elijah Arroyo. Now, not positive, but I think I can find Elijah Arroyo's numbers on this. Let me double check if StatHead will give me this information. I'm curious about it. So let me look at, I think this will work for college. 1 second. College tool. No, it doesn't. A player game finder. No, I can't get it for college. So that's unfortunate. But Elijah Arroyo is a much more of a deep threat than AJ Barner. That's what his game is built around. So I'd expect him to be part of that plan. Brady Russell's got a little bit of that in him, but I just don't think that they're going in with the thought that that's going to be this solution. Eric Saubert, not going to be that guy. Nick Callerup. So it really is Elijah Arroyo. And this is one of the real risks with this move, because Elijah Arroyo has had injury issues. He has had durability issues over his time in college. And if he goes down, you have exactly 0 players with that profile on this team. I will say Marshall Lang, the undrafted free agent, had a nice camp. He's another tight end. I haven't talked about him. He had a nice mini camp, nice OTAs, nice rookie mini camp. I don't know that I think he's going to be a big part of their plans, but this is a risk. That's the risk of this move, is there isn't another guy after Elijah Arroyo that fits that field stretching, vertical tight end player. And he has to prove, one, that he's good enough to be in the NFL. We don't even know that yet. And then he has to prove that he can stay on the field. So those are 2 pretty big questions. And I think if there's any player on this roster that is most impacted by this move, it's Elijah Arroyo. I think they're going to put him front and center by doing that. So they could have kept Noah Fant around and made sure that Elijah Arroyo was going to be healthy and be the player that they wanted. That would have been a way to mitigate risk, but that pushes back to why now? Why would they take that risk? Why wouldn't they be more patient? We'll get to that in a minute. I think there's other reasons that could be why they felt the need to do it now. Now, I see a lot of folks talking about AJ Barner, and they kind of say, well, this is a guy that is supposed to be a good blocking tight end, but he really wasn't last year. And I think it depends on what kind of blocking you're talking about. I think let's talk about pass blocking first. When you're talking about actually, let me look at it a different way. I want to look at pass blocking from a different lens. So if we look at pass blocking from true pass sets, and remember, true pass set is plays when there's, at least 4 rushers. So like if they've only rushing 3 guys, they're not going to really call that a true pass set. They eliminate play action, screen passes, really quick throws that are under 2 seconds. So this is more of a true test of pass blocking. In those situations, AJ Barner had only 6 reps, only 6 opportunities. He gave up no pressures in those situations. So he did fine in that regard. Now, if you look at PFF grades and you look at, his pass block grade overall, it wasn't great. It was a 56.8. That's right around like Jatavian Sanders for the Panthers, Tip Ryman for the Cardinals. Brock Bowers was below him, 51.6. Brock Bowers did a few other things instead, but that's a separate story. So he didn't have a great pass blocking grade, but he didn't give up a single pressure. Like forget the grade for a second. He didn't give up a single pressure in that situation. Why does he have a low grade then? Because he had a couple of holding penalties. That's it. So AJ Barner was a perfectly good pass blocker last year. He did have a couple of penalties. All right, that's not the biggest deal. What about as a run blocker? This is where I think AJ Barner has work to do. And I think AJ Barner has talked about having some work to do in this regard. And if I look at his performance last year as a run blocker, he had a 57.5 grade. Now, why wasn't it higher? Well, because he had 2 penalties. These are not capability issues. This is not an aptitude issue. This is a technique. This is a savvy experience. He had the most penalties of any rookie tight end in the NFL last year when run blocking or pass blocking. So he's got to clean up his penalties. But this doesn't mean he's a poor run blocker or a poor pass blocker. He's going to be good at both of them. Now, it is worth noting that he had a slightly higher grade as a gap scheme blocker last year, 68.2. And that, for what it's worth, was the third best blocking grade for a rookie tight end last year. And he by far had the most snaps. The only guys that are ahead of him had less than 20 snaps doing gap scheme blocking, and he had almost 100. His zone blocking was at a 62, and that was likely brought down by penalties. And as far as snaps, he had the third most snaps as a zone blocking tight end among the guys that were rookies last year. So I think AJ Barner has demonstrated he is going to be a good blocker in the NFL. He has put on more muscle. He looks even more the part than he did last year. And now I think it's just about cleaning up technique and having a coaching staff that's going to be able to really tell him exactly how they want it to be done. So I think the arrow is very clearly up for AJ Barner. I think he can make a very big jump this year for the Seahawks. So that's one part of it. Now, the other, let's talk about Elijah Arroyo. Let's talk about Elijah Arroyo. And actually, before I get to Elijah Arroyo, let me look at, so AJ Barner, just so you know, in college, he was a guy that had a pretty good reputation. I'm looking back at some of his grades. Did pretty well as a run blocker, especially in college. His last year in Michigan, he had an 81 grade as a run blocker. And if I look back at all the tight ends in college football in 2023, he, I think, is going to be, if not the top, he's going to be one of the top players in that regard. So give me a second while that pulls up. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to look up another guy. So while we're waiting on that, give the show a like, click subscribe. Would appreciate your support doing that. And also growing this community, which has been awesome. So let me pull up Elijah Arroyo as well. All right. So yeah, so in 2023, this was not this past season, but 2 seasons ago, AJ Barner's final year in college football, he had the second best run blocking grade in college football, 81.4. So I think AJ Barner is set to take a pretty big step forward as he gets some of the penalties cleaned up. Now, Elijah Arroyo. His year last year, as far as receiving depth, his average depth of target. Well, let's see. I can get for you. He had 15 targets of 20 yards or more. He caught 8 of them, which is pretty darn good, actually. And he had a 98.3 grade on deep passes last year. That's amazing. On passes from 10 to 15 yards, he had 7 targets. He caught 5 of them. He had a 95.7 receiving grade there. On passes, so he had only, what would that be? 22 targets of over 10 yards, if that's right. That's kind of wild if that's the case. A lot of those deep passes came over the middle. 7 of his 15 deep targets came over the deep middle, and he caught 5 of them for 157 yards. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, again, in terms of where he is on the field. Now, the other part of this is that where was he in terms of yards after catch per reception? He was pretty good. He had 9 yards after the catch per reception last year. Now, if I look back at last year and I look at receiving grades for tight ends in college football, first of all, you get a long list of guys. So I got to find Elijah Arroyo. So there's Elijah Arroyo. He had for yards after catch per reception, Elijah Arroyo was second in college football last year among tight ends in that number. So once he got the ball in his hands, he was a big threat. He was second only to Terrence Ferguson, who's down south with the Rams. Terrence Ferguson had a 9.0 yards after catch per reception. Elijah Arroyo was 8.9. So they were basically the same. So again, you've got a guy that once you get the ball in his hands was pretty damn dangerous last year for a tight end, especially. Now, how was he as a blocker? I would bet that's another story. We'll take a quick look there, and then I will get into the teased part of this, which is what are the other reasons they might have made this move now? So, as a pass blocker, to be honest, he was pretty good. He had 37 pass blocking opportunities and allowed 2 pressures, no sacks. In true pass sets, he only had 3 opportunities. He gave up no pressures. He had a 70 grade. It's not terrible, especially for a guy that's not known for his blocking. Now, run blocking also wasn't terrible. Had a 61 grade. He had 3 penalties. So that's likely a higher grade if he doesn't have those penalties. And he had some pretty good games depending on where you're looking. So it's not like Elijah Arroyo is a disaster as a blocker, but I don't think that's his strength. So that gets you a look at some of those guys that are going to be stepping in. The one other guy I wanted to bring up that I've been touting is Nick Callerup. So if you look at 2024 run blocking and we look for who was the best run blocking tight end in college football last year, Nick Callerup had the 3rd best run blocking grade of any tight end in college football last year at 81.8 grade. He only had 1 penalty as a run blocker. He was good in gap, 81.6. He was good in zone, 75.9. Telling you, this guy is legit. And then if you look at pass blocking, let's take a quick look. I don't know if I've seen the pass blocking grades for Nick Callerup, but I think what they're excited about is what he could potentially add as a run blocker. Now, pass blocking, this guy's not quite a offensive tackle, but he's big, dude. Like he's definitely, you're going to notice when he has pads on, he looks different than every other guy out there. So getting to pass blocking, well, he did pretty good there too. He was the 12th best graded tight end in college football last year with a 69 grade as a pass blocker. So that's the third guy I at least wanted to give you a little bit of information on as a guy who I think is going to benefit from this change. So, all right, getting back. I see there's a couple super chats. Let me get to those, and then I will get into the other reasons this move could be made right now. Super Sauce XL, who's been a member for 14 months, over a year. That is amazing. I love it. Thank you for the loyalty and the support. He says, hope they give Elijah Arroyo lots of opportunities. Well, they have no choice but to give Elijah Arroyo a lot of opportunities. He's the number one tight end in that specific role on the roster, is my guess. And the Seahawks are going to run a lot of two tight end sets. I think you're going to see a lot of Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner on the field together. And I, for one, am really excited about that combination. It's very young. I think it's very talented. Lots of upside. I don't think the Seahawks have had a group of tight ends this young with this much upside in a little while. Now, I will say, if you rewind 2 years ago, well, like last offseason, the Seahawks let Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson walk, and they signed Noah Fant to a 2-year expensive deal. I think they kept the wrong guy. I mean, honestly, either Parkinson or Dissly would have been a better choice in my book. I honestly wasn't. I expected them to sign one of those guys for a cheaper price. The other thing that's an opportunity cost of Noah Fant was potentially Damian Lewis or Jordan Brooks, but like one of those two. So people talk about the Leonard Williams deal kind of keeping them from keeping Damian Lewis, which I think is legitimate. But it's really the Noah Fant contract that was closer in terms of dollars. And now Damian Lewis was more expensive, so that might not have been realistic, but you could have, I think Jordan Brooks, you could have signed him instead of Noah Fant. Now, maybe if you had signed a Will Dissly or a Colby Parkinson, you couldn't have, and that's fair. But even if we were to go at that, I would just say I think that they made the wrong choice. And I think this demonstrates that. Colby Parkinson signed a deal for $22.5 million, $7.5 million a year. Now, Colby Parkinson has not been great for the Rams, and they just drafted another tight end in Ferguson. That's probably going to push Parkinson down the list. But I think Colby Parkinson would probably still be on this roster if they had signed that deal. Will Dissly signed a $14 million deal, that was $4.6 million per year. I guarantee you Will Dissly would still be on this roster if they had signed him to that deal. So I think that's the looking backwards, hindsight's 2020. I think that's a mistake that the Seahawks made in bringing back Noah Fant at that price. I was against that move as soon as it was announced. You can go back and find evidence of it. And, he signed a $21 million deal for $10.5 million a year. I think you would have rather had Parkinson at $7.5 million a year, or even better, Will Dissly at $4.6 million a year than Noah Fant. So Couple things there. The other super chats, Chris Clark back at it, giving 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Chris, thank you for your generosity. If you want to use one of these free memberships, make sure you have gifting turned on your YouTube account. Google it. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you how to do it. And then make sure you like, subscribe, comment, watch. The more you engage with the channel, the more likely you are to get one of these free memberships. Sheed asks with his super chat, is $71 million in dead cap a worrying thing? No, I mean, people get a little bit over their skis on dead cap meaning something significant. It's generally an indication of some bad choices. And the dead cap money, if you're wondering where it's coming from, 21 millions from DK Metcalf, 14 millions from Draymond Jones, 14 millions from Tyler Lockett, 14 millions from Geno Smith, 4.5 from Noah Fant, 2.5 from Rayshon Jenkins, 2 from George Fant, Cameron Young's 363,000, and DJ James is 138,000. So a lot of that are moves like DK Metcalf. They didn't want to trade, but they did. So I don't think that's an indication of a bad move, and all that money comes off after this season. Draymond Jones, that was a bad move. It was an unfortunate move. I think they jumped after they lost Zach Allen. They just went to maybe the next most talented guy they could see out there and gave him more money than was the right amount for him. And they had him playing a position that didn't really fit his skill set. So that was a bad move. The Tyler Lockett thing, it was just time. And Geno Smith was, he wanted to move. They would have kept him as well. So, and again, his number comes off. All these numbers come off after this year. I don't think it's a big deal. In this case, I don't think it's a big deal. Also, it would be a bigger deal if you didn't have tons of cap room, which brings us to our next topic here, which is why, if it's like the most likely scenario is why they pick now is because they wanted to give snaps to the guys that are going to get the opportunities, like AJ Barner, like Elijah Arroyo, so forth, right? There are at least 2 other possibilities about why now. One of them is that they might be looking to make a trade. And a couple things have happened related to this that could be interesting. So TJ Watt, as you should know by now, signed the most lucrative edge rushing contract in NFL history last week. It's going to average $41 million per year. It's wild. That's a lot of money. $108 million guaranteed. That's a huge deal. All right. Then yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. Yes. George Karlaftis, the young edge rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs, signs a 4-year, $93 million deal with $62 million guaranteed. That means he is getting $23.5 million per year. That puts him as the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as the 10th highest paid by average per year edge rusher. You know who's behind him? Trey Hendrickson. So Trey Hendrickson has continued to get moved down the list, and the price for Trey Hendrickson has continued to move up. Does that make it more or less likely that the Bengals are going to be able to agree to a deal with him? I'd argue probably less likely. Now, you could say, well, now they've got the numbers they need to figure out what the real market is. Maybe there was a disagreement about what the market was, and now they have evidence that Trey Hendrickson's representation can say, look, this is clearly what he's worth based off of these 2 numbers. So you could make that argument. My read is the Bengals don't want to or don't have the money to spend there. And if I go and I let's take a look at the Bengals cap situation. The Bengals right now have 31 million in cap space. They have less cap space than the Seahawks, but they have a decent amount. They have the cap room to sign a player like Trey Hendrickson to a big extension. And the thing to also know is if they were to trade Trey Hendrickson, they would clear $16 million in cap space. All right. So they would go up to almost $50 million in cap space if they were to trade Trey Hendrickson. The Seahawks have the money they need to sign a player like Trey Hendrickson. And if you want to know historically, how likely is that? Do the Seahawks make trades this time of year? Well, if you rewind back to 2020, I think it was 2020. Yes, 2020, July 25th, 2020. Anyone know what the Seahawks did on July 25th, 2020? So 4 days, at least calendar-wise, from right now. They traded Bradley McDougald, a 2021 first-round pick, a 2022 first-round pick, and a third-round pick for a guy named Jamal Adams and a fourth-round pick, which, by the way, became Kobe Bryant. So, yeah, they have made a big friggin' move right at the beginning of training camp pretty recently. It's not common. I looked through all the other years. It's not a time that they're making these kinds of moves. It does happen, but this is the only one I could find that was a serious deal. So, by the way, if you want the final accounting of that Jamal Adams deal, the first round pick that they gave up in 2021 became Christian Darrisaw, one of the best left tackles in football. The third round pick became Wyatt Davis, a good guard. The 2022 first round pick became Garrett Wilson, who just signed a massive extension. And the Seahawks fourth round pick that they got became Kobe Bryant. So, man, can you imagine if you just said it wasn't draft picks, you said we're going to trade Bradley McDougald, Christian Darrisaw, Wyatt Davis, and Garrett Wilson for Jamal Adams and Kobe Bryant. Whoa. Yuck. So point being that it is possible that why now is that the Seahawks wanted to clear the cap room to make that deal realistic. Now, the reason I discount that a little bit is that you could make the trade and then cut Noah Fant. Like, it takes a few days for the physicals to go through. You don't need to clear cap space ahead of making a trade. You don't have to do that. You can actually sign a player to a deal, come to an agreement, and not have to make the move to clear the cap space until after. So you often will see teams sign a player and then cut someone in a corresponding move. So I don't think that's the most likely reason. Now, I know people would love me to say otherwise, but I don't think that's the most likely reason. It's possible, but I don't think it's the most likely. The other reason that it could be done is the Seahawks might want to sign some guys to extensions. And usually when you sign someone to an extension, it actually lowers their cap hit for the year. So that part of it doesn't make as much sense because you don't need to clear cap space to then clear more cap space, right? That's not the logical thing. But there are two other aspects of this that are worth understanding. One, they could do a different style of extension where they front load some of the cap hit into this year that will then save them some cap space in future years. if they've got all this cap room, they might want to utilize it that way. I've talked to John Schneider about it. He said that is something that they think about from time to time. So that could be possible. The other part of where this could tie into extensions is people get confused between cap and cash. Cap space is kind of almost like a made up number. I mean, that's the wrong way to describe it. It's a calculated number, but it's not necessarily felt by the team. What I mean by that is, you could sign a player to an extension right now and include a signing bonus of, let's say, $20 million. And it's a 4-year deal. Well, the cap hit of that is only $5 million prorated over those 4 years. But the cash generally is going to be $20 million this year. You get it right when you sign. So the cash outlay is 20, but the cap hit is only 5, right? I'm giving a very simplistic example. So what could be going on here is they saved $10 million in cash by cutting Noah Fant, and now they can sign Charles Cross to an extension, Kobe Bryant to an extension, whomever they are thinking of, and they'll have more cash, that ownership in their budget that they can spend. So ownership gives John Schneider a cash budget. That's different than your cap limit. So there's a certain amount of money that they can spend this year. Now, they did not go big in free agency. They did sign a lot of draft picks. So there's some of that is an expensive draft class in that regard. But they haven't done an extension yet. So I think this is a pretty likely. I will say this. I will be surprised if we do not see a Kobe Bryant extension in the next few weeks. He is the perfect level for them to do. Will not be super expensive. They extended Julian Love last year before the season. And in fact, I can look up exactly when that was. So 2024, they extended Julian Love in, when was that? Hold on. I'll find it. But they extended him actually July 24th last year. Yeah. So I would be surprised. Kobe Bryant, a good young player in the last year of his deal, probably won't cost more than, at most, I would say like $6 to $7 million per year. That's my best guess. And get him before he gets his full season as a starter. They like him. They feel good about him. Lock him in. Like, that makes sense. I would also say that Charles Cross could be a guy that they decide to get done. Other guys that are from the 2021 draft class, the 2022 draft class, they could do Boye Mafe. That's probably the next most likely. I don't think they're going to do Kenneth Walker before the season just because of the injury stuff. I don't think they're going to do Abe Lucas before the season because of the durability concerns. Personally, I think that's going to be a huge mistake. I think they absolutely should sign Abe Lucas before the season. That's my perspective. Doesn't mean that I'm right. They could sign Reek Woolen, but the indications are that they're not going to. I think that's going to be something that they may regret, but we'll see. So I think Charles Cross and Kobe Bryant are probably the most likely, with Boye Mafe being a tick below. And to give you some idea, I just said Julian Love was a guy that they signed this time of year. They also, in 2022, signed DK Metcalf to his contract extension on July 29th. So there's multiple examples of them doing extensions right around now, right as you get into training camp. Gives those guys good feeling, gives other players in the locker room knowing that good players will get rewarded on the team. So that's, I think, the most likely reason outside of wanting to give snaps to the right guys is that I think there's probably at least one, maybe two extensions coming down the pike for that 2022 draft class over the next few days. So that's my read. That's kind of a deep dive on what seems like maybe a straightforward move, but I think there's a lot of nuances around this move that make it kind of a fun one, an interesting one. I wish Noah Fant nothing but the best. He was a super good guy. I think he was, a fine player. I don't think he was a difference-making player for the Seahawks, but I think he could go to another team and be productive. And I wish him a really successful rest of his NFL career. All right. Again, if you weren't with us at the beginning, tomorrow night, there is going to be a new show on a different channel. It's not on this channel. It is on the Seahawks Collective channel. You can find it at youtube.com @Seahawks Collective. And it's going to be 5 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be, at least tomorrow night, it's only going to be 3 of us. It's going to be Michael Sean Dugar, Rob Staten, and myself. And then in a couple of weeks, we are going to add in Annabelle Hasselback. Yes, Matt Hasselback's one of his daughters. She interned for the Seahawks last year. I got to know her really well. She's going to be the host of this show. She's great. I think she's a future star, and it's going to be a fun show. Different kind of collection of voices with different perspectives, talking Seahawks. So make sure tomorrow night, 5 p.m., look for Seahawks Collective on YouTube. Make sure you follow and subscribe, all those things over there. And we'll start bringing even more Seahawks content. So check it out. You will, I think, not regret it. Before we go, Italian Night sneaks in another really generous gift of 50 free Hawk Blogger memberships. Unbelievable. Italian Night has just continued to support this show and helping to build this community of really cool folks. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it, man. So again, like, subscribe, watch, comment, all those things help you increase your chances of getting one of these free memberships. If you get one of these free memberships, really think about upgrading to a club level member or higher, because that will get you access to player interviews before everybody else, and also gets you access to the Discord channel where you can chat with folks throughout the day. You can bemoan Mariners blowing a chance to sweep the Astros yesterday in the Mariners channel. There's WNBA talk, there's Sonics talk, there's Kraken talk. There's all sorts of stuff going on, movies, books, TV shows. So it's a really fun community over there on Discord. You got to be club level or higher on YouTube in order to get in. I will also remind you, patreon.com/hawkblogger, there are still 2 spots open in the Ring of Honor. If you join as a Ring of Honor member, there's 2 spots open. And if you join now, you still have it. You will still be invited to the Ring of Honor dinner at Daniel's Broiler the Friday before the Seahawks season opener. So it's going to be really fun. A lot of good people are going to be there. I think Rob's traveling. He's going to be there. Evan Hill will be there. I think Dana will be there. So a lot of folks. So consider, if you haven't already, joining as a Ring of Honor member over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. You also get a really fun elite level channel in Discord that only those folks get access to. So appreciate all the support. Would love to add more people to Ring of Honor. Have a great rest of your Monday. If there's any other news that breaks, you want to have that bell clicked, because I'll go live and I'll cover it about these Seahawks. All right, folks, have a great rest of your Monday. I am Brian Nemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.